The Demon Within, Part 3. Lindsey awoke to see the Professor standing over her with a large piece of rubble sticking through his chest. The vampire wasn't even remotely fazed by it. He just wanted to make sure she was okay. Lindsey could also see Kirsteen perched over a nearby rock, wincing in pain, with blood running down the side of her head. "Thank God for a second there, Lindsey, I thought—" The Professor couldn't even finish the sentence. "She's okay. Can we please just get out of here?" Kirsteen moaned. "Honestly, Kirsteen, it's just a few bruises. Try being impaled, which, by the way, only happened because I pushed you out of the way," the Professor said as he pulled the shard from her chest. "Where are the demons and the aliens?" Lindsey asked as she scrambled up. "Well, most of the demons flew away when we crashed, and the aliens? All but the leader, sadly, didn't make it. Even then, I don't know if he's alive, or I just haven't found the body yet," the Professor said. "I can assure you I'm fine," the leader said from a distance. As the three unlikely companions turned around, they saw he was surrounded by dozens and dozens of Maliac foot soldiers. "As for you lot, that depends on if you do as we want," he continued. "Well, isn't that just the way?" the Professor said. "We helped you escape from demons who want to eat you, and... Actually, your harebrained scheme got my entire platoon killed," the leader interrupted angrily. "Personally, I think you're not a tenth as clever as you think you are, but the Master has ordered you to be brought to him," the leader continued. "The Master? Just a short while ago you were proclaiming him to be a false god," the Professor said. The Maliac leader looked at his men somewhat nervously and then quickly punched the Professor. "Liar! I always remained loyal," he said in a rage. "If any of your platoon had survived, they would back me up," the Professor said. The leader shoved his gun into the vampire, who didn't even look remotely scared's ribs. "Our leader will see through this fool's bluster and lies," he said, as the soldiers gathered around the vampire's two companions. Above the planet, meanwhile, the fleet of demon spaceships that had gathered around the Maliac's home planet's attention was suddenly taken up by a strange anomaly. It was seemingly an empty space, but any time one of the vessels tried to get through it, something stopped them. Little did any of them know it was Fang's vessel. "There's nothing there!" the demon screamed at its subordinates after another failed attempt to break through. "It's obviously some form of magic, my lord," the underling said nervously. "It doesn't make any sense. The Maliacs don't have that kind of magic. Also, if they did, why would they only use it to block out one tiny little area in front of their planet? Perhaps it is a concealed weapon, sir. Then why did they wait for us to destroy the surface of their planet before using this weapon? Nothing about this makes sense. I want to know what's in there. Order all units to attack this force field, or whatever it is." Below, in the Maliac Master's base, "We have the aliens, sir," the leader of the Maliac said to its so-called god, who, as always, concealed his face behind a cloak. "I was just about to give up on your people. I chose you all to cleanse this universe, and look how easily you've been conquered by those savages," the god said with disgust. "Sir, if you would only let us use the demonatria, then we would triumph," the Maliac commander responded. "No. That weapon is an abomination against this universe. How dare you question my will again?" "I'm sorry, my lord." "You should have heard what he was saying about you outside," the Professor said smugly. The Maliac's god, however, paid no attention to the Professor's taunts. He was far more interested in what the Professor was. "You're a vampire, a child of Castron. I can see his mark. Your breed is not the kind who decimated the Red Planet. How did you get this far from home? How did you get past the demons above?" the god asked. "Well, you know how it is. I'm terrible at directions. I was just trying to get to the pub and I ended up here," the Professor said flippantly. The god was not amused, however. "You think the destruction of an entire world is funny, do you, little man? Of course you do. You're a vampire. Children of the most deplorable demon in all of existence, it said back. Still, you're not going to withhold any secrets that could potentially help my children. Children? Well, it depends on if you lot deserve my help, the professor replied. What are you talking about? Kirsteen said. You saw those demons out there, what they did to us. How could you be on their side? I never said I was on their side. You don't always have to be on one side in a war. There isn't a good guy in every fight. What do you care or know about morality, vampire? The god sneered. We are talking about the survival of an entire species. Why can't you help them? The professor asked. I mean, you're their god and everything. There was a silence before the god attacked the professor. The professor tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Lindsey and even Kirsteen tried to intervene, but the Maliaks held them back with their guns. The monster continued to beat the professor until eventually Lindsey, unable to take it any more, screamed out, Stop! Stop! Please! I'll tell you everything if you spare him. By now the professor was beaten to unconsciousness. The god held his beaten and bloody body up with one hand. Tell me now, or I'll rip off his head. We're time travellers. The professor, he created our vessel by magic. It's in a state between the present and the time vortex to allow us to enter it, but to protect it from intruders. That'll be why those flying demons couldn't find us. We can take you there. The god wasn't sure whether to believe Lindsey or not. Her story seemed fantastic, even by his standards, but she didn't seem to be lying. The fear in his voice was genuine at least. The vessel can travel across time and space, you say? Yes, Lindsey said nervously. You can't change time, I'm afraid, not without being trapped in an empty space forever. I don't care about that. I'm not someone who ever looks back over mistakes, the god said, as he looked at the Maliak soldiers with disdain. A plan began to form in his head. Bring me the demonatra, the god said. The Maliaks looked shocked. But, sir, you said... I know what I said, but now it seems we might have a way of depositing the bomb against our enemies. Bomb? What bomb? Kirsteen asked. The demonatra is a weapon devised by the Maliaks. It attacks demons. They don't belong in this universe, and so, in theory, it's able to single them out without harming anything else. I would never allow its use normally. It's too unstable and unpredictable. Up above, however, when it's safely away from our people, then you can launch it, the god explained. You mean to say you're happy to sacrifice us? Kirsteen asked. What are 3 lives for the sake of a world? The god said. Besides, as you two are not demons, then the bomb will not harm you. What do you mean, you two? Lindsey asked. The vampire stays here. The bomb will kill him, too. Besides, I have a feeling he is the most useful of you all. Kirsteen looked at the leader of the Maliaks. After all you said back in the camp, you're now willing to follow this whatever he is again? She asked. They would all follow me to the end of the universe. I was the one who raised them from mediocrity, and with your help, I'll do it again, the god replied, whilst the leader said nothing. If you kill us, you'll never be able to enter the ship, Lindsey replied. I'll find a way eventually, and if I don't, I'll make sure you suffer most of all. You will help us, one way or another, the god said, as it held the professor by the throat. Lindsey knew there was nothing she could do against this monster for now. For the time being, she and her friends were its slaves, as much as the Maliaks, and they soon prepared for their long journey across the wastelands of their planet. The Maliak commander who led this platoon said nothing as they pushed the 2 women out of the door, though there was a look of shame on his face. Whether that was because he had doubted his god, or perhaps he was selling the professor and the 2 women who had just helped him out so quickly she didn't know. Just before the mountain crashed and she was knocked out, Lindsey saw the commander pray for just a few seconds to the false god. Clearly the fact that the commander had lived had restored some of his misplaced faith, but how he or any of them could still be taken in by this obvious impostor baffled her. Again, for now, she was forced to go along with it as they set off for her ship. This would be the second time in just a few days that a malevolent entity had entered the Bat. "You really need to improve your security," Kirsteen said to Lindsey before they were marched off. "You're awake. Finally. Now we can have a long and civilized talk, like gentlemen," the Maliak's god said mockingly to the professor, who he was left alone with. "Demons, more like," the professor replied, as he stood up, his hands and feet both chained to a wall. "I know what you are," the professor continued. "I've met a few gods on my travels to know a phony when I see one." "Ah, yes, in your time vessel. I'm still not sure about that, but, well, we're out of options now. Such a disappointment about the Maliaks." The professor looked around and saw they were alone. "Where are Lindsey and Kirsteen? If you've hurt either of them, I swear—" "You'll what? I may not be a god, but I can still take care of a miserable child of Castron. No problem." "Where are they?" the professor said, showing no concern at all for the god's threats. "They're on their way back to your vessel. One of the females said she knows how to pilot it. They're going to deposit a weapon against the demons in the sky, one capable of harming all demonic life. Sadly, by the time my people developed it, those winged brutes had swarmed our world. There'd have been no way of getting it into space, but with your vessel, we might just have a chance." "I see you weren't willing to detonate it here because you'd go up with it. You were happy to let the Maliaks all die just to save your own skin." "Why should I sacrifice myself for them?" the god asked in anger. "They were nothing without me. Another primitive race who'd probably never have made it to the stars and would have been swept away by a natural disaster, exploited by a more advanced species, or vanished without a trace when their son died. I gave them a purpose and a special place in the universe," the god continued. "To be wiped out by demons? It's not my fault they weren't up to the task. I gave them all the knowledge and magic they needed. I appealed to their feeble, superstitious brains, told them that I was their god. I even assumed his form," the demon said, as he morphed back into his true form, a hideous, insect-like creature in back. The hood was a holy symbol to them, akin to the cross on Earth, though he still had to change shape to fit it, as his real form wasn't even humanoid like the Maliaks. "It's funny, they seemed to be on the verge of giving up on that superstitious belief when I arrived," the demon said. "I told them I had grown displeased with my other creations across the universe, and that it was their job, as the only children I was proud of, to cleanse the universe of life. At first, under my leadership, they did manage to conquer a few primitive worlds and exterminate all of their inhabitants. Then they moved on to more advanced planets and even toppled a few empires. Oh, I was so proud. Then, however, several allied planets fought dirty. They forced all of their demonic races to ally against my children. The alliance of races had long since conquered the demons of their worlds and reduced them to slaves, so they made the perfect disposable army. The Maliaks were completely unprepared for such a force. They fought demons on many worlds before, but on most planets demons are tiny, scattered forces. We were overwhelmed and pushed back to their home planet. If the Maliaks fail this time, then I'll leave them to their fate. There are trillions of other worlds and species out there I can use this trick on again." "I just don't understand why. Why take an ordinary race and advance them through science and magic? You're a demon. Why not find a way to make them creatures like you?" the professor asked. "I tried that many times before. Demons have greater power than any of the natural creatures. Your average demon could tear apart 5 of my Maliaks in a fair fight. Unfortunately, however, demons are such cowardly, backstabbing worms. They can never work together. Every time I tried to lead them, it was a disaster. They were constantly trying to usurp me, stab me in the back, abandoning each other in times of need. I could never hope to mobilize them as an effective force. Angels, meanwhile," he continued, "even if they did ever follow me, would never take another life unless it was self-defense. The real gods were too powerful for me to lead, and even if I could, they only care about themselves and their own interests. Natural creatures, however, they're the perfect foot soldiers. They can have the necessary aggression and desire to dominate like demons. However, they can only possess loyalty to one another and to a strong leader, like me. Surely, physically, most of them are weak, but even then that can be amended to a little bit of genetic tampering here and a little bit of magic there and a few culls of the weak and infirm of their race, the demon continued. I'm going to be sick, the professor said. You seem to be something of an anomaly, the god said to the professor, ignoring his insults. You're a demon, but you actually seem to care about those two women. I wouldn't expect you to understand much of anything, to be honest, but least of all that. That's okay. I don't need you to. All I need to know is that I can use that to force you to share your secrets of other worlds with me. If you don't, those two women will suffer. Assuming they make it back, of course. If they don't, well, I'll butcher one Maliac child in front of you every day until you tell me. Understand? I understand. I'm going to have to kill you, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it, the professor said back to the god, who didn't show any fear of the vampire whatsoever. You will learn to obey me, vampire, the god said, as he sent for several guards to take the professor to his cell. You're a god. Make me and show your followers, the professor taunted as he was carried away. Lindsey and Kirsteen, meanwhile, soon reached the area they could teleport to the professor's vessel by an escort of 6 Maliac troops. Lindsey and the professor could sense where it was due to their connection to the ship. Kirsteen could even feel its presence somewhat too, though her connection obviously wasn't as strong. Along the way, they saw hundreds of mountains flying over the planet. The Maliacs were able to keep out of sight, however, knowing it would be foolish to fight their demonic enemies. At various points, Lindsey thought about running. She knew the demons would still kill her regardless, but she felt it was worth it not to let the time vessel fall into the Maliac's hands. Ultimately, however, she didn't, for Kirsteen's sake. She and the professor had brought her to this mess after all. They couldn't have returned her to her own time, but they should never have brought her to this planet where she was inexperienced. Lindsey vowed to herself that no matter what, she was going to get Kirsteen out of this mess. They soon reached the spot. Remember not to try any tricks. We still have the old man, and if you try anything, we'll send you back to him in pieces, the leader of the Maliacs said. Born again, little bloodthirsty fanatic, aren't you? Lindsey replied to the leader, who pushed his gun to the side of Kirsteen's head in response. Lindsey hoped to stall the Maliacs long enough for the demons to find them. They were out in the open now, so there was a chance they could be spotted. Lindsey pretended the spell wasn't working for a few minutes. What do you mean it's not working? I don't know. Maybe those demons managed to find our ship, but the magic's not taking us up, she tried to bluff. The Maliac's leader was no fool, and in response he shot Lindsey in the leg. You think you can trick me? Next time I'll blow off each of your fingers, the Maliac said. Okay, Lindsey said, knowing she was beat. In a flash, they were all taken back up to the professor's vessel. This place is dire, the leader said derisively. Well, we don't have time to redecorate after a demon tried to kill us all. He was a real monster. He'd make short work of you and your so-called god, Lindsey said, as she fought through the pain in her leg. Can you take me to the med bay, please? If I bleed to death, I can't help you, she continued. First, take us to the control room. You can show us just before you bleed to death. The god will not be kept waiting any longer. God, I hope those demons eat you, Lindsey said, as the Maliacs made her limp down the corridor to the control room. There, Lindsey checked the controls and saw that there were hundreds of demon ships outside. They obviously noticed there was something wrong with this area of space and they've gathered around it. There's nothing we can do right now. If we move, they'll catch us for sure, Lindsey explained. You're lying, the leader stated. I'm not. Take a look at the scanner. It's an illusion. You will take this ship to the furthest reaches of the solar system, or I'll... Suddenly, Kirsteen broke down in tears. "Stop making that noise, it's pathetic," the leader said to Kirsteen, whilst Lindsey limped over and tried to comfort her. "I can't take this any more. I just want to go home," she whimpered. "My old life was miserable, but compared to this, I just can't." Before she finished, Kirsteen kicked the Maliac nearest to her in the crotch and grabbed its rifle. She then shot 2 more Maliacs dead before pushing Lindsey behind a nearby control panel. Whilst she wasn't exactly the best aim, the aliens were so near to her that she didn't have to be. "I'm impressed," Lindsey said. "Thanks. To be fair, what I said is true. This is a nightmare, but still." The 4 remaining Maliacs shot at the control panel whilst Lindsey took the gun off Kirsteen. "No offence, but I'm a better shot," she said. Lindsey shot at the ceiling above the 4 Maliacs. The blast distracted them for a few seconds, allowing Lindsey to jump down towards the corpse of one of the Maliacs Kirsteen had killed, whilst she quickly hoisted it up as a shield. The Maliacs blasted chunks out of the former soldier, whilst Lindsey shot 3 more of the creatures before throwing what was left of the soldier she used as a shield into the leader. Whilst he struggled under the corpse, Lindsey held her gun at him but did not fire. Even in these circumstances, she'd still rather not take a life unless she had to. The Maliac still reached for his gun, but Lindsey shot his hand off, after which he then lunged at her, forcing Lindsey to shoot him in the chest. Lindsey then sank to her knees and began to faint. All of the adrenaline she had used to overcome the monsters began to wear off, and the blood loss from her leg was beginning to catch up with her. Kirsteen managed to catch Lindsey just as she fell. Lindsey, come on! We need to get you help!" Kirsteen said desperately. Whilst she was distracted, however, little did Kirsteen know the leader of the Maliacs, who was stronger than the others, thanks to experiments on the gods' order to make their leaders a stronger stalk, had survived the shot to the chest. He was still dying, but with his last ounce of strength, he managed to push the corpse off and jump onto the main control panel. He pushed several buttons, which thrust the ship forward into the demon vessel. The entire vessel was rocked back and forth from the collision, and Kirsteen and Lindsey were sent hurling to the other end of the room, as was the Maliac and its bomb, which it clutched onto. 2 of the demon vessels were knocked out of orbit by the Professor's vessel, but the hundreds of others began to surround the ship, ready to attack it, and the ship was now vulnerable as it had entered this reality completely and was visible to the demons. To be continued.